Welcome back to another edition of GTN Coach's Corner, where we answer your questions. On today's show, how do you prep for a hilly route indoors?
How to use spinning for your cycle training?
How do you do heat adaptation at home?
And what would you adjust if you're just having a bad day? Well, we've got plenty of variety to crack on with.
All right, straight on with our questions, but before we do, a reminder that we could be answering your question next week. Just leave it in the comment section down below this video or any of our videos and use the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Any triathlon training question, we'd love to answer it. Okay, our first question is from Mark Ball, or Old Slow Ironman, as he's nicknamed himself. GTN Coaches Corner question for James. Oh, good thing I'm here. I just watched the 2016 Ironman Nice video. Do you have any tips for an old 60 to 64 slow age grouper who has qualified to go to the Ironman World Champs in Nice this year, especially the hilly bike course? I live in New Zealand and it is coming into winter for us, so long outdoor rides will be very miserable. If you pass on your knowledge, I promise not to tell anyone. Oh, well, okay, we'll just keep this between you and me. Everyone else, hit the mute button for a second. Yeah, thanks. Okay, you don't need long, hard outdoor sessions to get ready for a Ironman on a hilly route. You do need to do hills though, and this is a bit of a tricky one because a lot of people will say just do some Zwift hills, do some hills on your turbo, or do low cadence stuff in your turbo, and you can. It does make your legs a little bit stronger. The problem with hills, especially in something as long as an Ironman, is that you need to use all those stabilizer muscles too, and when those get tired, you simply can't climb anymore, even if your legs are feeling great. So you need to train that, and the solution to train that is hill reps. Yep. So put on your winter woolies and your clothes and head to the nearest hill and ride up and down it. Now these can be anything from 1 to 2 minutes of real power climbing, like you might do in a few times towards the top of hills in your Ironman Nice route, where you get out the saddle and you're really working hard, all the way down to 5-6 minute repeats up the hill where you in your aero bars or even sitting up, but you do a lower cadence and you do that real strength work, because that Ironman Nice course is going to require some long, slow grinds up those hills. The key thing here is that you do need to practice the way you race, which means carrying the nutrition. It means in the position that you hope to race in, on the bike that you hope to race in. A lot of people do, oh, it's a hill session, I'm going to take my road bike out, and then on race day they have to ride up those hills on a TT bike. You need to make it specific as possible. And then one last thing is that you need to do this hill climbing when you're tired. I mean, most of the hill climbing in Nice does happen in the first half of the bike route, but you will be tired when you climb in some of those hills. So there's no point, every time you do these hill rep sessions to get ready for it, you go out fresh as a daisy and you absolutely smash them and feel great on hills, because a couple of hours into that Ironman, you won't be feeling so great. So do them sometimes when you're tired, sometimes after a long bike day or after a big bike day on the turbo, then head out and do a few hill reps when you're tired, and I'm sure you'll be fine come September in Nice. I hope that answered your question, Mike.
Yeah, I guess you also need to, I know he's questioned about sort of the uphill, but you need to have a little bit of practice, especially if it's a TT bike, of being comfortable riding it downhill, because the descents are quite long in Nice. And I know the weather's bad, but that one might just be, you have to just go and grin and bear it for
find a dry day and try and go down a few hills and get comfortable on the TT bike.
Yeah, wear some good gloves.
It can make a big difference.
Yeah. Right, this next question is going to be our 60-second challenge. So I'm going to read the question, and then James is going to have just 60 seconds to answer it. So James, I hope you're listening carefully.
I'm ready.
This comes from Laura Witt, and she says, "Hi, as I train for my first triathlon in August, I am finding the roads in London quite intimidating for cycling. I'm getting my cycling by doing spin classes. Is this something realistically I can continue until August, or should I brave the London roads?"
Oh, so basically she's asking, can I use spinning for training for triathlon? The answer is yes and no. Spinning is not very specific to triathlon. It's not the holding your steady pace for 20 to 40 kilometers. You're going to be up out of the saddle, you're going to be doing high cadence, you're going to be really high intensity. And if you do a standard spinning class with flat pedals, doing really high intensity and surges and stuff, it's just simply not very specific. However, if you tone that down a little bit, the surges, if you put your own shoes on and your own pedals, then you can do really well with a spinning class occasionally, and it can boost your fitness. It is certainly better than not riding at all. The ideal, though, is to get out on the road. You want to get out on the road and do some of your riding on the road, and if you can't do that, then a turbo at home, stationary trainer, which the smart ones these days really simulate the road. So do that, and it's better than a spinning class. It's somewhere between riding your out on the road and riding a spinning class. A stationary trainer at home is going to be your answer.
Ooh, spot on. I don't know if the guys are going to show the clock, but we had it here when James was on time, on point there.
Yeah, I don't think I've got anything to add to that topic.
No, I haven't either. So we'll move on to the next question.
Brilliant.
From Aidan Malone, who says, hi, GTN. I'm doing a cycling event this July in France and was thinking of doing some heat adaptation work on the indoor trainer. I was wondering how to best fit this in around the rest of the training. For example, should I now do single low effort heat adaptation session a single one, or take a specific portion of the training plan and do it all as heat adaptation? Well, Aidan, it sounds like you've got the right idea with the first part of your question there. Great that you're already thinking ahead of July, and you're going to be ahead of a lot of people who will not have thought about this. And if you are in the UK, which I am guessing you might be if France is going to be hot for you, or somewhere cold like here, then yeah, it will be a shock to the system, and you're going to have to address lots of other things like your fueling and your hydration as well. But adapting your body to be used to it physically and mentally is a really good idea. And by adding in the fact you're doing a lot of your indoor training, you can actually start to do that quite easily by just turning off your fan, for example, or closing the doors, turning the heating up a little bit if you need to. And by doing it little and often and building it in is the best way for your body to actually have time to adapt without taking too much out of you and affecting the rest of your training as well.
Yeah, I think it's the second part of his question is how should he adapt that? And he does know he needs to, but how? And the answer is the same as everything when it comes to training. Start slow and start short and build it up. Don't jump into your hardest session a week as heat training, because that will just smash you for the rest of the week. It can take up to 72 hours to recover from dehydration. And even if you are drinking while you're doing these heat sessions, you are going to get more dehydrated. And remember, when you're doing these heat sessions, as you build them up and as they do get longer, as you get used to them, you start increasing the heat and also increasing the duration of these hot sessions. You're not just training your body to get through the desert without any fluid and ridiculous heat. You're training your body to use the fluid you're giving it to keep you cool, which means you need to give it the tools to do that. And that means drinking a lot more than you used to. You need to train your stomach and your gut to absorb that fluid so that you can sweat it out again and it can keep you cool. If you're not doing that, there's not actually that much point in doing the heat training. You're training yourself to actually cope with the heat. You're not training yourself to survive heat in the worst possible circumstances. So make sure you're drinking properly and then make sure you're rehydrating afterwards, because as I say, it can take a long time to recover from a bad bout of dehydration.
Yeah, nice one. Cool. Well, that leads us on to our next question, which is a bit unusual. From Claire Pitt. She says, I live on a tiny uninhabited island for work. Do you have any tips or tricks for my bizarre situation? Claire, I want to know what your work is. So if you are watching this, please let us know, because we are seriously intrigued here.
That is an interesting question. How big is this tiny island? Is it 100 meters wide? Is it 5 kilometers wide? Does it have any roads? She says it's uninhabited, but it can't be completely uninhabited because she's
living there.
Yeah. Does she have a treadmill? Does she have a turbo trainer? Can she run on it? Can you swim around this island? Or is it somewhere in the North Sea? So many questions. I don't think we can actually answer her question without having a bit more information. So hopefully Claire will get a hold of us and tell us a bit more information.
Yeah, we're
curious. An intriguing puzzle for us to help you with. If we can help you train on your tiny and uninhabited island, we would love to help you. But I think we do need a bit more information before we can answer
and
that
if it's got quiet, closed roads and a lovely swimming pool, we'll be there.
Yeah, we might come to a camp.
It won't be so uninhabited.
Yeah. Okay, next question is from Massimo, and he says, if a plan calls for X amount of time in zone Y, okay, algebra here, if you're having an off day or a bad day, should you do a shorter amount of time in the prescribed zone or the full time in a lower zone? For example, the plan calls for 2 hours in zone 2 on the bike, but the route you've chosen doesn't allow for sustained zone 2. Should you do 2 hours in zone 1 or just 45 minutes in zone 2? I think basically the question is, should you, if you're having a bad day or you're not feeling it, or you don't feel like you can sustain what your program calls for, should you do the full duration at a lower intensity, or should you do the same intensity but for a shorter duration? And my answer to that would be ease off the intensity, do it easier, and do the full duration. There's a few reasons for this. Firstly, if you're having a bad day, there's probably a reason you're having a bad day. Maybe it's stress, maybe there's an illness coming on, maybe there's something else going on that you're not even aware of yet. And if your body's telling you this is too hard, it's because it's too hard. So back it off, do it easier. If you are back it off and you still can't do the duration, then something's definitely wrong and you need to go home and rest. If you can back it off and at a lower intensity do the full duration, you get that psychological boost of still having got through the whole session. You will also find that you feel better afterwards, and it probably helps you recover from whatever you were struggling with, and the next time you can do the next session. And you might often find, in fact, most of the time you will find that the bad patch kind of passes, and about an hour into your 2-hour ride, you actually feel better and can pick up that intensity again and get it done. Whereas if you've pushed yourself through something that just felt unsustainable from the start, you're going to probably put yourself in a hole, feel awful, go home with your tail between your legs and just not get much from that session at all.
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? It's knowing yourself really well of whether it's a bad day mentally or physically. And only you will know that, and sometimes even like highly tuned athletes will struggle to differentiate that. And like James says, once you get going, that's when you get a bit more of an idea, because if you have sort of feeling just a bit sluggish and lazy, that will often then change throughout the session, and you'll be like, oh, physically I'm actually fine, I just didn't want to do this session or get going. Whereas if you don't really pick up during, that's more of a sign that, yeah, your body is kind of under a little bit of stress for whatever reason, and it's a better idea to take it easy. But I think cycling is, I guess, more specific because you're riding to numbers of, you're talking about zones, so I imagine you're potentially going by power, but I find with running it's a little bit more free in that sense, and I often run to feel. So some days I don't look at my watch if I know that I'm actually not hitting those times, but I'm still going with the effort mentally. So yeah, I mean, I think that
is a good point. Turn off the numbers if you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
Just back it off and
just listen to your body a bit more if you can.
Yeah, and look at your surroundings, enjoy the ride, go, well, I'm just going to go easy because I'm not feeling it. And you might find that things turn around quicker than you thought. I hope that answers your question, and remember, if you guys have your own questions, comment section down below, we could be answering them next week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week.